Wake County, the North Carolina Senate. Thanks again for joining us today as we discuss the undocumented immigrant community in North Carolina. The undocumented community is a vital but often overlooked part of our state's economy. You'll hear from a number of speakers today representing several groups that look to help put North Carolina's undocumented residents on a pathway to citizenship. You are going to hear from Pilar Rocha Goldberg, President and CEO of El Centro. You're going to hear from State Representative Ricky Hurtado. You're going to hear from Anna Blackburn with the NAACP and the Poor People's Campaign. You'll hear from my colleague, Senator Natalie Murdoch from Durham, and you will also hear from community activist Eleazar Posada. El Colectivo is hosting a series of events to educate North Carolinians on the need to fix our broken immigration system. This press conference marks the kickoff of a week of action designed to put a spotlight on the needs, the unmet needs of our undocumented community in North Carolina. It's long past time that Congress enact comprehensive immigration reform to give a pathway to citizenship to the close to 11 million undocumented residents in this country. Now, there are a lot of the work that needs to be done happens in Washington, D.C., and all of us here today will be calling for action on immigration reform. But there is important work that we can do on the state level as well. In the Senate, I have filed and pushed legislation to guarantee that undocumented residents, those who are receiving DACA, those dreamers, are allowed to get in-state tuition at our North Carolina public colleges and universities. And for folks, what that roughly translates to is if you are a DACA recipient who has essentially lived in North Carolina all your life, you're going to have to pay close to triple the cost to go to UNC. So that is absolutely wrong. It's something that can easily be fixed and must be fixed. It's a bill that we will continue to push until it becomes law. Also, we have undocumented residents who are unable to get driver's license in North Carolina. That is a state issue where we can make action and make real change to allow undocumented residents to go and get a driver's license. Many states have implemented this reform on the state level, and they have seen safer roads, safer streets, and healthier communities. These are two actions that we can take. I don't want to talk too much. I'm very excited to hear from our other speakers, so I will just move forward and introduce our first speaker today. It is Pilar Rocha Goldberg, President and CEO of El Centro.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Buenos días a todos. I'm Pilar Rocha Goldberg, President and CEO of El Centro Hispano, one of the non-profit organization members of El Colectivo NC. For many years, our community has been at the center of the battle for an immigration reform that was promised during President Biden's campaign. Months ago, the federal government presented to the National Congress the Day 1 HR 177 Citizen Law to offer to undocumented residents the pathway to gradually and systematically legalize their status, but it was methodically blocked in the Senate. The only way to see an immigration reform that includes all undocumented immigrants, 11 million, is by the reconciliation process proposed that includes support to immigrant groups like TPS, DACA, Dreamers, refugees, and their families. We claim for the 11 million. That's right. It is time for a comprehensive immigration reform. We advocate for an inclusive solution, a response for the 11 million undocumented immigrants who live in the United States and contribute to the growth and development of this country. It is why we as El Colectivo NC, a coalition of grassroots groups and non-profit organizations, organized the Week of Action for Immigration Reform to bring our message to local and state legislators. It's time to act. The reconciliation process is the only viable option to open the way to citizenship this year. It's a unique opportunity. The United States requires and deserves an immigration system with a human face that protects the migrant population, workers, and their families. Support an integral reform is the correct answer and permanent solution.
Thank you so much. Next, we're going to hear from State Representative Ricky Hurtado.
Good morning, everybody. Buenos días a todos. Over 40 years ago, a young couple of 20 years old fled their home country to escape a civil war ravaging their home. They fled north to the United States, not just to chase the American dream, but to escape a nightmare back at home, literally in the trunk of a car, waiting to see what was left for them on the other side of the border. They struggled to survive here, working at restaurants, gas stations, and as house cleaners fighting to make ends meet. 6 years after living in the shadows, they received a life-changing opportunity: immigration reform and a pathway to citizenship in the mid-'80s. This transformed their lives, and they worked hard to make sure their sacrifices were not in vain, that they could always put food on the table, support their children in school, and make sure that they could go off to college and fulfill the dreams that their family had to defer. Those immigrants were my parents, and that child was me, now Representative Ricky Hurtado of Alamance County. That is the opportunity we have in front of us once again. Every day we do not pass immigration reform is a moral and economic failure of our community. I know this because I see this reality firsthand in all of our communities. As an educator working with young children of immigrants, usually as part of mixed status families with undocumented parents, and what that means for the challenges and opportunities in front of them in North Carolina. But let's be clear, all of us are impacted with the failing of not passing immigration reform in our country. We have farm workers feeding everyone in North Carolina, in eastern North Carolina. We have essential workers keeping our economy running through a global pandemic. And we have students fighting to enter college to become the future workforce of North Carolina. The census numbers that just released a few weeks ago could not have made it more clear. We are becoming more diverse, more multiracial than ever before, and a large part of that is because of the growth of the Latino community. So it's time to act now, and we're calling on Congress that we need immigration reform, and we need it now. So let's get this done. Thank you.
Thanks so much. We've got to fix our broken immigration system. And next, you're going to hear from Anna Blackburn with the NAAC and the Poor People's Campaign.
Buenas tardes, good afternoon. I'm Anna Ilajarraza Blackburn. I am the Latino Immigrant Liaison for the North Carolina NAACP and one of the tri-chairs for the North Carolina Poor People's Campaign. The sad thing is, we have been here before, and time and again are met with no results on behalf of so many state and U.S. representatives in support of our immigrant community. Systematic racism is a policy choice, and it's a conscious choice that every state and U.S. representative makes when signing their names and voting on bills locally and nationally that target, instill fear, and create a dangerous environment for our immigrant community and their supporters, like our local sheriffs here in North Carolina. See, Psalms 82:3, defend the weak and the fatherless, uphold the cause of the poor and oppressed, which is what we are doing here today, standing before you, to stand and fight alongside our immigrant community, because we cannot count on our representatives to do what is morally correct. In fact, various state and U.S. representatives are very comfortable and emboldened in repeating history when it comes to oppression. All you have to do is look at the bills that are proposed and passed. You see, the presumption that immigrants should be deported because it's the law is a farce. Slavery, the Holocaust, and separating families were legal, yet they are morally deplorable and socially unacceptable. No humane or civilized society would allow such acts to continue. in this nation. True leadership should rely on truth and facts. No rhetoric, no conspiracy theories, no forced narrative, and no fear. I understand that facts and truth are a foreign language to many these days. In fact, due to the release of the census report, it is critical to rely on the facts, which point to the growth of our Latino and immigrant community. Therefore, it is economically insane for our representatives to target the very community that is helping build our state and nation, because you see, there is $5 billion in purchase power in the immigrant community. The Poor People's Campaign's mission is building from the bottom up. When you build from the bottom up, everybody rises. The Moral Movement, the North Carolina Poor People's Campaign, the North Carolina NAACP stand alongside the El Colectivo in support of our immigrant community. Understand that we know how to fight. And let me just remind you that we at the North Carolina NAACP have fought back and won over 12 unconstitutional bills from in this state. And yesterday, a 3-judge panel cleared a way for over 50,000 people in our community supervised for felony convictions to vote in the upcoming election. So to our state and U.S. representatives, understand we are here for the long haul. And we at the NAACP and Poor People's Campaign will stand alongside the El Colectivo and our immigrant community, because we know how to fight, and not just fight, we know how to win. In the last election, our Latinx community increased the vote. The people that were registered by 60% came out to vote. The census shows an increase of over 380,000 Latinx community members. It's time for a change. The continued oppression and disregard for morality and human dignity and decency for another human life that does not look like you are numbered. It is time to replace representatives that support anti-immigrant bill. It is time for full immigration reform. It is time for the 11.1 million undocumented people to have the life that they deserved while building this state and this nation. Mi gente, the power begins with us. Let's get the vote out and ensure that full immigration reform is not in the past, but is our reality now. Thank you.
I wanted to just quickly echo two of those very important points. Number one, I don't believe that change happens within this building. It happens with people outside, make issues their priority. And to that effect, one thing that she mentioned that is incredibly important isn't the successes we've had, but it's the bills that we've been able to kill. The bad bills we've been able to stop because Democrats broke the Republican supermajority. The legislators here standing with can speak to that as well. But we had an ICE detainer bill that targeted immigrant communities, it targeted African-American sheriffs, and we were able to stop that bill because Governor Cooper vetoed it and Republicans didn't have the votes to override his veto on that bill and so many others. So on the state level, we are able to put a stop to bad bills, and that is something that we have done very well and has been an important success for this legislature. Next, I'm very glad to introduce my friend, my colleague, Senator Natalie Murdoch.
Thank you so much, Senator Nickel, and really I'm honored to join this very diverse group today. I was the first Black woman under 40 to be elected to the General Assembly, even though I can trace my roots to North Carolina all the way back to slavery, but talk about the diversity, because it will take a Black and brown coalition to finally get immigration across the finish line. It will take the support of all the advocates that are here today, from Pilar to Elzar to the legislators that I'm honored to stand with here today. These are folks that are not new to this topic or new to this issue. Before this work, I served as a soil and water supervisor, have a deep history in agriculture from Western North Carolina all the way now to the central part of North Carolina, and as well as Wilmington. And particularly when you talk about these issues, to just regular everyday people, to farmers, to people in the agriculture industry, to rural people, period, people agree that we need to get this done. It's just that partisan politics have simply gotten in the way. We've been so close for far too long, and it's time for us to step up the pace. We have to move forward and provide people with a legal path to citizenship. 8% of North Carolina residents are immigrants, while 7% are native-born U.S. citizens with at least one immigrant parent. We need more leaders with the political courage to work at the state and federal level to find a pathway to citizenship for these hundreds of thousands and millions of people nationwide. We all agree that our immigration system is severely broken. We can't keep putting our heads in the sand while families are separated and children suffer. America is a country of immigrants. We often forget that. That's what makes our country strong. I, along with North Carolina Senate Democrats, continue to fight for fair and equal immigration system. I proudly voted against SB 101, the ICE 2.0 bill, which says that jails must comply with ICE detainers and requested any person charged of a criminal offense be reported to ICE. This means holding a person for 48 hours after they would otherwise be released under state law. That bill and so many others is simply racial profiling full stop, and was only brought up because several sheriffs in urban areas refuse to work with ICE. I, along with my colleagues, will continue to push legislation that will protect our immigrant community and not honor their values and commitment to our state. And when we look at ICE 2.0 bill, not only do we need to continue to focus on immigration reform, but we need to talk about treating immigrants who are here today with dignity and respect. We can't overlook that. There is absolutely no reason that we treat our neighbors and our community members as if they are second-class citizens that are forced to live in the shadows. SB 180, to provide driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants, is a bill that I'm proud to have co-sponsored with my colleagues in the Senate, as well as Senate Bill 672 to provide in-state tuition for DACA recipients. That was one that a number of us wanted to follow in the state Senate. We came into session wanting to do that, and I've actually reached out to the Attorney General's office in Virginia. They were able to move forward on that simply with a memo from their Attorney General, so that's something that we're looking into as well. Unfortunately, federal regulations do not allow undocumented and DACA recipients to receive federal financial aid. Also, current state regulations do not allow undocumented and DACA students to receive in-state tuition rates at universities within our North Carolina system, even though, again, they are our neighbors. They are paying taxes, their parents are paying taxes, yet they do not have the ability to access in-state tuition. Those are the types of inequality that we have to call out. We cannot continue to build systems that are separate but equal. My people went through that. We know that simply doesn't work. We have to continue to shed light on these issues. It's long past time to get serious about immigration reform. Again, I'm proud to stand with this diverse coalition so that we will continue to push forward on these issues. The things that we do in this building cannot be done in the dark. We must continue to shed light on them. We can't continue to wait while our neighbors continue to suffer and live in the shadows.
And last, I'm very glad to introduce Eleazar Posada, a community activist who has been with a number of groups on the front lines working day in and day out and will continue to do so on issues that matter to the Latino community. Eleazar.
Thank you, Senator. Buenos dias, good morning. Today my role is simple, to highlight the importance of what has already been said today. Our immigrant community is part, not just a part, an integral part of our society. We need to treat them with the respect that each of us deserves. They're our neighbors, they're essential workers, they're our family, they're our students, they're our nurses. There are folks who make sure that through this pandemic, we had food in the supermarkets. We had food in the restaurants that so many of us called in and ordered delivered because we wouldn't go outside our homes. They were out there, making sure it happened. This week, El Colectivo has organized, and I am honored to be a part of an organizing group, a series of events to highlight the importance of our community, as well as to give you everyone at home and every elected official across the state a chance to make your voice heard on this issue. We'll be having a Twitter storm, so please go follow the Colectivo social media pages, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. This Saturday we will have an event right here in front of the NCGA where we're going to be having speakers and culture artists from across the state coming in to speak about the importance of an immigration reform, and we'll also have Reverend Barber who will be giving us a speech about the importance of this immigration reform, as well as what Ana has already mentioned, the importance of our community being out there. On top of that, several of us will be joining national leaders later this month in DC for a whole week of action in DC. We'll be meeting with senators, representatives, and other leaders at a federal government to push just this. But ultimately, it comes down to each and every one of us making our voice heard. Today, we will be sending out to every legislator in North Carolina a letter for them to sign. It is a letter that has been sent out to multiple states across this country with over 300 elected officials across the U.S. signing on, requiring that the federal government take action. So I expect all of our leaders to sign on to this very important letter. With that, I give you my greatest appreciation for being here. And for all of the speakers today, thank you for making your voices heard. Thank you for the enormous work you're doing on this. I know that if we really band together, if we put our resources where they need to be, if we put our voices where they need to be, and we push our elected officials, we can actually get this done rather than push it down the line or kick it to somebody else as we've done so many times. It is time to do this now. Thank you.
So much for everyone joining us here today. Does anyone have questions?